Imagine standing on a bustling city sidewalk. Above you, these massive glass and steel structures are just stretching up into the clouds.
Yeah, it's a very familiar feeling for most of us, right?
Exactly. And all around you, the pace of life is relentlessly accelerating, constant motion, endless information, and, well, everyone rushing toward the next big thing.
It is thrilling, but I mean, it also creates this distinct kind of vertigo.
It really does. You find yourself asking, like, how do you maintain a moral center in a world obsessed with speed and, impossible heights?
Right. How do you keep your feet on the ground when every system around you is engineered to pull you upward at breakneck speed?
Yeah, and that tension is exactly what we are dissecting in this deep dive today.
It really is the defining tension of our era.
It totally is.
Okay.
So we are exploring this fascinating narrative text titled The Measure of Ambition and the Witness of Truth.
And for those of you who follow philosophical literature, you probably know this text uses an allegorical cast of characters.
Yeah, like there's the uncle, the nephew, the aunt, right?
Exactly. And they aren't just people. They act as embodiments of different facets of the modern mind.
Right. And our mission today isn't just to summarize the story. We want to really dig into the mechanics of the philosophy it presents.
We want to extract those permanent questions about human identity that are hidden within the temporary spaces of a global metropolis.
Okay, let's unpack this. The narrative starts with a brilliant physical metaphor, right?
Yeah, it uses the physical architecture of the city to force these characters into like an internal moral inventory.
We see this right away when they're on the sidewalk, confronting the ultimate symbol of modern acceleration, the skyscraper.
Right, and what's fascinating here is how the uncle interacts with this building. He functions as the voice of tranquility and measure in the text.
Right, he isn't doing what a typical tourist does.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
He isn't looking up with surprise or, calculating the engineering marvel of it.
Yeah, the text says his gaze is an act of taking measure, and it notes that the building rises not toward the sky, but toward human ambition.
Exactly. He is treating the building as a mirror. The intentionality of his gaze is so crucial here.
So he's observing this physical manifestation of power to sense, how far he himself could go.
Yes. The text is establishing that our external environment prompts questions about our internal architecture.
Oh, that makes sense. Because while he's staring at the building, this anecdote surfaces in his mind about a villager visiting New York for the first time.
Ah, right. The villager looking at the skyscraper.
Yeah, and when asked what he's doing, the villager replies, "I'm watching to see when it will pierce the sky."
That's such a striking image.
It really is. And the uncle reflects on this and concludes that the building won't pierce the sky, but sometimes it pierces the human heart.
That is so profound.
Right. My interpretation is that the villager projects his own fear of limits onto the structure, like he's treating it as an outside threat to the heavens.
Yeah, but the uncle realizes the rot is internal. He's pinpointing the exact moment ambition turns destructive.
Yeah, and then Roger, who represents universal reason, chimes in.
Right. Roger observes that power becomes piercing the moment it forgets its limits. Think about the physical mechanics of a skyscraper.
Ah, like how they are built.
Exactly. To build that high, you have to artificially pump in air, control the climate, and seal the environment off completely from the outside world.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So when human ambition becomes that towering, it operates the exact same way. It seals you off from natural feedback loops.
I love that. It's like climbing the corporate ladder or grinding for endless productivity. We focus so much on the vertical height we're achieving that we completely forget the ground we're standing on.
Exactly. We build these towering ambitions, but what are the foundational limits?
Right. And the cousin who views the world through systems notes that extreme height estranges a person from the ground.
Because the higher you climb, the smaller everything on the earth appears.
Exactly. Until the realities of human limitation just look like abstract data points. You see this in the tech industry or global finance, right?
Oh, absolutely. Leaders who are so elevated in their vertical ambition that they just completely lose touch with the ground level consequences.
Yeah, but we cannot overlook the aunt's contribution here.
Right. The voice of compassion and realism.
Yeah, she quietly adds that this estrangement doesn't always come from physical or economic elevation. She says sometimes it begins in the heart.
That is such a crucial point. You don't need a penthouse to be detached from reality.
Right. You can build a towering, isolated structure entirely within your own mind.
Cutting yourself off from the grounding reality of other people.
Exactly. Which brings up a major shift in the narrative. Right at this moment of reflection, the uncle hears a warm, familiar voice behind him.
Yes, his old friend Erhan.
Yeah, and the text describes the uncle being startled, but notes it was not fear, it was memory knocking on the door.
I love that phrasing.
Yeah.
They haven't seen each other in years, but their connection is described as being completely in measure.
Right, it's the total antithesis of the unrestrained excess of the skyscraper.
The contrast is very deliberate. The towering ambition of the city creates isolation, but groundedness is reestablished through intentional human connection.
Yeah. So after this brief reunion, Erhan invites the group to a press conference nearby.
Right, to hear a speaker known as the young man from Dayface.
Yeah, and the uncle takes one last look at the building, agrees to go, and delivers this line. Looking is not enough. One must know where one is looking.
It's a really powerful transition.
But I struggle a bit with that distinction. Like, in our digital age, aren't we all just endlessly looking at screens, news feeds, global events?
Constantly.
So from a purely mechanical standpoint, we know exactly where we are looking, right? We're looking at our phones. What is the text actually demanding when it says we must know where we are looking?
Well, it is demanding a shift from passive consumption to active orientation.
Oh, okay. Like your eyes can be open while your mind is entirely adrift.
Exactly. The uncle turns away from the silent, overwhelming scale of the skyscraper to engage with a human voice. He justifies going to the press conference by stating, "Because a word seeks its place." He recognizes that vision without philosophy is just sensory overload.
Ah, I see.
A word seeking its place implies that truth isn't something you just stumble upon by looking around. It requires a receptive, cognitive environment to actually take root.
That makes a lot of sense. So they enter the press conference, leaving the quiet reflection of the sidewalk for the structured, loud, global language of modern media.
Yeah, the hall is massive, packed with strong lights, cameras, journalists, academics.
But the text doesn't describe the atmosphere as grand, right?
Oh, it describes a profound tension. Not a clash of ideas, but the tension of words waiting to be weighed.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we see the characters react to this environment based on their archetypes.
Yes, the nephew, who embodies the speed of the age, takes out his notebook. But the text explicitly notes he uses it to know when not to write.
Wow, knowing when not to furiously take notes, just absorbing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Roger looks at the cameras and the lighting and observes that words in this room are not merely spoken. They are produced.
That phrasing produced words feels incredibly relevant. It's like an assembly line.
It is the underlying mechanism of the attention economy.
Right. When words are spoken organically, their primary function is to communicate truth or emotion.
Yes, but when words are produced, whether in a press conference or, through a social media algorithm, their primary function shifts.
They are engineered to capture engagement, provoke a reaction, or signal status, like everyone is fighting to be right rather than searching for the truth.
Exactly. And the Anne spots this immediately. She looks at the crowd and observes that not everyone is curious about truth, but everyone wants to be right.
Wow.
This raises an important question about how you, the listener, consume information. When words are produced rather than spoken, the environment just becomes a theater of validation.
Yeah, and the cousin recognizes the structural danger of this. He points out that the global language of the room enlarges the word by broadcasting it, but consumes its depth if it isn't preserved.
It is the paradox of scale. You broadcast a nuanced idea to millions of people, and the sheer velocity of the distribution just flattens the meaning.
It gets compressed into a soundbite.
Right, which is why the uncle's behavior in this scene is so striking.
Yeah, he deliberately bypasses the cameras and sits in the very back row.
And he justifies it by saying, those in the front ask, those at the back hear.
Oh, I love that. He is rejecting the performative nature of the room.
Exactly. The people in the front row are formulating their questions while the speaker is still talking. They aren't listening to understand.
Right, they are listening to find an opening for their own voice.
By moving to the back, the uncle is actively creating that receptive environment we talked about earlier. He's choosing the posture of a witness over the posture of a critic.
That is such a great point. So the stage is set, and the speaker finally steps up to the podium, the young man from Dayface.
Yes. And he doesn't command the room with a booming voice or aggressive body language.
Right, his gaze is described not that of a leader, but of a witness.
And he simply states that humanity will eventually reach its noble equilibrium and complete its maturation.
Naturally, the journalists in the room bristle at this. One of them immediately accuses him of being overly optimistic.
But the young man's response strips away the emotional baggage of that accusation. He says, "Optimism is a wish. What I speak of is direction."
Wow, optimism is a wish. What I speak of is direction.
He is taking hope out of the realm of passive feeling and placing it into the realm of vector and trajectory.
But another journalist pushes him on this, demanding to know what evidence he has to support this trajectory, given the endless cycle of crisis and chaos in the world.
Right, and the young man answers, "On the human being," because the human being is the only creature capable of learning from error.
Okay, wait, I have to challenge the text heavily on this point on behalf of you, the listener.
Go for it.
The journalist in the story immediately fires back that humans repeat the same mistakes, and frankly, the journalist is right.
They have a point, yeah.
Look at history. We fight the same wars. We fall into the same greed. We repeat the same injustices. We are stuck in a loop. If learning from error is the mechanism for reaching a noble equilibrium, it feels like the awareness part he mentions is a massive bottleneck for us right now. Repetition alone clearly doesn't guarantee progress.
You are entirely correct. Repetition alone is just a loop. And the text doesn't guarantee automatic progress either.
Okay.
The young man doesn't deny the repetition. He concedes the point, but adds a critical modifier. He says, repetition adds depth to the one who is aware.
Ah, right. The nephew actually writes that specific phrase down. Repetition, when it touches awareness, becomes growth.
Yes. Think about it like a machine learning algorithm. An AI model runs the same processes millions of times. If it doesn't have a back propagation mechanism like a way to evaluate the error, adjust the weights, and feed that awareness back into the next iteration, it will just produce the same garbage output infinitely.
No, that's a great analogy.
Human history looks like a loop because we often repeat actions without that critical layer of awareness. But when awareness is applied, the error ceases to be just a failure.
It becomes the training data for our moral architecture.
Exactly.
That framing completely changes the dynamic. Without awareness, history is just a broken record. With awareness, the repetition is what actually builds the depth required for direction.
And the aunt recognizes the profound inclusivity of this concept. She notes that this language excludes no one.
Because every single human being makes errors.
Right. Therefore, every single human being has access to the raw material required for growth.
But the friction in the room continues to rise, right?
Yeah.
The journalists throw all these questions about technology, power, ethics at him.
Yeah, they want quick answers.
Yeah.
Slogans they can print.
Yeah. But he refuses to give them the produced words they are looking for.
Eventually, a journalist asks the ultimate dismissive question, dripping with cynicism. They ask, "Don't you think what you're saying is utopian?"
Yeah. And the young man lets a heavy silence fall over the hall before delivering the defining thesis of the text.
This is the conceptual peak of the narrative.
He says, "Utopia is an escape plan. What I speak of is a trust plan."
It's incredible.
And he follows it up by stating, humanity either escapes its burden or rises with it.
That distinction between an escape plan and a trust plan halts the cousin completely.
Because she processes everything through the logic of systems, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
She realizes that the concept of rising with a burden simply does not exist in the language of systems. Systems are designed to eliminate burdens, to reduce friction, to optimize.
And the uncle replies to her, but it exists in the language of the human being. So what does this all mean? Like, we need to ground this in the reality of how we live today. Systems language is all about efficiency. Life hacks, outsourcing, finding a utopian shortcut to avoid hard work. Everything about modern technological acceleration is effectively an escape plan.
We try to out-engineer our human flaws.
Exactly. But human language means actually picking up the heavy suitcase of your own moral and emotional weight and carrying it up the stairs yourself.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we live in a world that tries to systemize every human problem. We look for algorithms to govern us so we don't have to navigate the messy realities of politics.
We seek out like transhumanist solutions or AI automation to bypass the friction of our own limitations.
We are constantly searching for a utopian shortcut that allows us to drop the heavy, complicated burden of being human.
Yeah. But a trust plan is the exact opposite of that optimization.
A trust plan means rejecting the fantasy of a frictionless utopia. It means trusting in our capacity to actually bear the cognitive and moral load of our choices.
So when the young man says we must arise with the burden, he means the friction of making ethical choices, of facing our errors, is not an obstacle. It is the mechanism of our maturation.
Exactly. And as the press conference concludes, the text notes a palpable shift in the atmosphere.
Yeah, the people leaving the hall do not carry the same weight as when they entered. The forced tension of produced words has been broken by a moment of genuine orientation.
And as they walk out the glass doors and look back at the sprawling, accelerated city, the nephew asks the uncle, "Will this word remain here?"
And the uncle looks at the metropolis and answers, "It will not, because this word is searching for its place."
And the narrative closes by telling us that the city did not yet know whether it was ready for it.
The structural journey of this text is just brilliant. We started on the sidewalk, right? Confronting a skyscraper that represents towering ambition.
A physical height that artificially isolates us and risks estranging us from the ground of our humanity.
Then we moved into a loud media hall where words are mass-produced for scale rather than depth.
A chaotic environment where everyone speaks, but no one listens.
And finally, we found clarity in a quiet voice, advocating for a trust plan, and the courage to carry our human burden with awareness.
The real utility of this text for you as a listener is recognizing your own agency within these systems.
Right.
The acceleration of the world isn't going to stop, but you have the capacity to choose your posture. You can choose to be the uncle taking deliberate measure of your ambitions rather than blindly building them higher.
Yeah, you don't have to be estranged from the ground.
Exactly. You can choose to sit in the back row and truly hear rather than performatively fighting for validation in the front.
Treating your own repeated errors not as a permanent loop, but as the data required to build depth.
It's all about that trust plan.
Well, we have mapped out a lot of complex philosophical territory today, moving from the physical architecture of the city to the internal mechanisms of human growth.
We really have.
And the narrative leaves us with this profound, lingering image. A word that has been spoken, now wandering the accelerating streets of the city, searching for a place to take root. So I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder on your own. If that wandering word came knocking on the door of your daily routine right now, amidst all the noise, the screens, and the towering ambitions, is the city of your mind ready to give it a place?
That's a great question.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.